Transformers 1 arrives just as the Transformers franchise is celebrating its 40th anniversary, and it's more than a worthy celebration of the robots in disguise. Not only is it a gorgeously animated movie, but it takes a surprisingly soulful approach to exploring the origin story of Optimus Prime and Megatron. A large part of that is due to director Josh Cooley and screenwriters Eric Pearson, Andrew Barrer, and Gabriel Ferreri, setting the story millions of years in Cybertron's past, and revealing that Prime and Megatron used to be friends. But before they became enemies, the two Transformers were known as Orion Pax, Chris Hemsworth, and D-16 respectively. Pax and D-16 work as miners in Icon City after a war between the legendary Transformers known as the Primes and the Quintessons drove most Transformers to the surface. It's a hard life, as they risk their lives digging out what little energon lies below the surface and are ridiculed for not being able to transform. But the duo stumbles upon a map that potentially leads to the Matrix of Leadership, an ancient artifact that can restore energon to Cybertron's heart. Pax and D-16, along with their fellow miner Elita-1 and the talkative B-127, travel to Cybertron's surface to find the Matrix. But how does this lead to the fracturing of a friendship? Pax, D-16, Elita, and B-127 eventually find the map's final location, a cave where the bodies of the Primes lie. But they soon learn that one of the Primes, Alpha Trion, is still alive. Trion tells the Four the truth about what truly happened to the Primes. Sentinel Prime had told them where to strike at the Quintessons to end the war. But when the Primes arrived, they were ambushed by Sentinel and the Quintessons, who cut them down in cold blood. Sentinel has been trading the energon that the miners were harvesting to the Quintessons, and to make matters worse, he took the cogs that would allow them to transform. This is a huge blow to Pax, and especially to D-16, who saw Sentinel as a hero, and sets them on their respective paths. Pax decides to travel back to Icon and show the rest of the Transformers the proof of Sentinel's deception. But before that, Trion takes the cores of the fallen Primes, giving them to Pax and his friends. This means that they can finally transform, leading to one of Transformers 1's funniest moments, where the Four have to figure out how to seamlessly transform, and it's reflected in their transformations. Pax's persistent optimism and determination leads him to transform into a truck, while D-16's slowly growing anger leads him to become a massive tank, complete with the signature arm cannon he'll eventually wield as Megatron. A detour leads them to encounter the former Cybertronian High Guard, who broke away from Sentinel following his deception, but makes them prey for Sentinel's Lieutenant Arachnid, who absconds with D-16, B-127, and High Guard. Pax and Elita lead the remains of the High Guard and the fellow miners in an assault on Sentinel's Citadel. They manage to free their friends and capture Arachnid, who has recordings of Sentinel's various misdeeds. Pax then airs the footage, exposing Sentinel's lies. But D-16 is out for blood and attempts to kill Sentinel, only for Pax to leap in the way and take the blast, which fatally damages him. D-16 opts to drop Pax into Cybertron's bowels, before ripping Sentinel in half and taking his transformation core, which belonged to Megatronus Prime, a legendary war hero he admired. Taking things further, D-16 renames himself Megatron and starts destroying Icon City. But even though Pax has been wounded, he isn't out for the count. The Cybertronian god Primus reveals that he admires Pax's bravery and optimism, and grants him the Matrix of Leadership, which further transforms him into Optimus Prime. Prime and Megatron then engage in a battle where Megatron is defeated, but Prime decides to spare his former friend and banishes him from Icon. Before he leaves, Megatron growls, "This is not over, Prime," hinting at the long and bitter battle the two will eventually be a part of. Prime then uses the Matrix of Leadership to reignite the flow of Cybertron and grant transformation cogs to his fellow Transformers. Throughout Transformers 1, the groundwork is being laid for not just Optimus Prime and Megatron's origins, but for their respective factions, the Autobots and the Decepticons. Most of the Autobots work as fellow miners, including Jazz RC and Hot Rod. As for the Decepticons, the Cybertronian High Guard is led by none other than Starscream, Steve Buscemi with Soundwave, John Bailey, and Shockwave, Jason Canapisos Alvarez as his lieutenants. They decide to join Megatron in his attempted destruction of Icon City and leave with him when Prime exiles Megatron. But the end credits scene shows them branding themselves Decepticons, with Megatron saying that he will no longer stand for the deception of the Primes. Likewise, Prime and his fellow miners take on the moniker of Autobots, and Prime pledges to rid Cybertron of the Quintessons. He even names Alita as his commander and asks B-127, who most fans know as Bumblebee, to work with him as well. In ending with the establishment of the Autobots and Decepticons, Transformers 1 is sowing the seeds for the eventual war for Cybertron that will lead to both factions departing their home planet and landing on Earth. Producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura has even hinted that Transformers 1 might shape future Transformers films, telling ComicBook.com, "Josh did such a great job in actualizing the characters in this movie, and it is going to have an impact on the live action where we can't not meet that bar. It won't be necessarily literally a character or an event, but it has an effect on what we're gonna do." Whatever the future holds for the Transformers films, Transformers 1, it is still a phenomenal animated feature that deserves to be seen on the big screen.